Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the great state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends, and good morning. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Michael Dukes Show. Just another beautiful day here in paradise. Surprisingly, dry and warm here this morning. 38 degrees with no rain this morning. Although, before we get deep into the weeds on all the stuff we're going to talk about today, I will say that there is a winter weather advisory for the Kenai Peninsula, specifically for the Turnagain Pass area. 8 to 14 inches of snow. Winds, gusts up to 35 miles an hour. Travel's going to be difficult, especially near the road to Whittier and along the Portage Glacier Road. Rain and snow mix up to 6 inches of rain. Up in the Fairbanks area, actually just south in the Denali borough, 20 to 40 mile an hour winds with gusts up to 60 as well, with blowing snow and a few power outages possible as well. Those are the two big winter weather things going on. So I wanted to give you the heads up on that. First things first. Today is a full boat. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, is with us, waiting in the wings right now. As Brian likes to say, it's pain day again. It's pain day. You know, I didn't take ibuprofen either this morning. I should have taken ibuprofen as a prophylactic against Brad's commentary today. The weekly top three. It's gonna be a fun one. We're gonna dive into that with Brad Keithley. Then at the top of the next hour, we're expecting Nick Begich to be calling in. Congressman Nick Begich with information on the inauguration yesterday and the executive orders. We're hoping it happens, okay? Because I never did hear from the scheduler, although I did schedule it with somebody. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm fingers crossed. Then Chris Story, the man from Homer, will come in to soothe our savage wounds from everything else. It'll be fine. The balm of our. So that'll be in hour 2 this morning. But before we get any further, I suppose we should just dive right in, shall we? And we should just we got to eat our broccoli before we can have dessert. That's what's going on. The broccoli of the day, Brad Keithley, Alaska for Sustainable Budgets, joined us this morning. Hello, Brad. How are you doing, my friend? What's going on?
I'm doing great, Michael. Are you saying I'm driving you to drugs?
You're driving me to drugs, yes. I mean, a little ibuprofen in the morning just to prevent the onset of the Brad headache. That's it, we always joke about this, Brad, but the bottom line is that these are things that it seems like, maybe it's just perception, but it seems like nobody else is talking about. We're talking about things that really no other news outlet, I don't know of really any other talk, Alaska Talk or anything else that's really discussing these things in the depth that we're discussing it. You cover things obviously in your weekly column, but there's no journalists out there that are really covering. So, I mean, while it is painful, it's the honest truth that needs to be discussed. And it seems like nobody else is talking about these things.
Yeah. The third segment today, I've titled Selective Mutism, which is.
Yeah, I know. I had to look up what that word meant, Brad.
Well, just think of Raj on the Big Bang Theory, who couldn't talk to women. He had selective mutism.
And that's sort of never seen the Big Bang Theory, but go ahead.
Oh no. Oh my gosh.
I know, really. But I understand. No, I understand. It's crazy what's going on out there. So we're gonna talk about it. But I guess we'll just go ahead and get cracking, get started on it. There's a new review out from Leg Finance, which gives us a little bit of a taste, a precursor of what this session is probably going to look like from a monetary standpoint. Let's get to it.
Well, there's 3 documents really that those who follow fiscal matters sort of look forward to. Maybe is a wrong word, but take into account as you approach the session. One is the governor's budget, certainly, to see what the governor is proposing to the legislature, as unrealistic as it may be, or as empty as this last proposal from the governor. But that's one, the governor's budget. The second is the fall revenue forecast, which is the Department of Revenue's honest and I think for the most part is honest, an honest, straightforward look at the sources of revenue the state has and where they're headed, and what's going on with them. And the notable one from this fall revenue forecast, as we've seen from a couple of the last forecasts, is that even though oil production is going up by orders of magnitude, revenue from oil is staying flat, and that's the big take away from the fall revenue forecast. The third one that's not as widely known as the first two, but the third one that is equally as important, I've come to realize in my view is equally as important, is Leg Finance's analysis of the governor's budget. Overview, they call it the overview of the governor's proposed budget. And it's published in advance of the start of the legislative session. And the reason that is important is it's another non-aligned, or it's another independent view of what the governor at the time, whatever governor it is, what the governor has proposed in terms of the realism of the governor's proposal. But it's also sort of an insight into at least what some parts of legislative leadership are thinking about, are looking at in terms of numbers and in terms of constraints on what their flexibility is. Leg Finance essentially works for the chairs of Senate Finance and House Finance, and certainly the head of Leg Finance is close to both of those. And I think as a result, this overview is really written for those clients to tell them what the important parts are of the governor's proposed budget and the state's outlook, fiscal outlook. Right. This one is the one. This one got published. This year's Leg Finance overview got published late last week, Thursday or Friday. And the executive summary of it, if those listening or those watching haven't read it, is worth the time to read. I want to highlight one thing in particular that the overview says. It's on page 8 of the executive summary, or page 8 of the introduction. There's 2 parts to it. One is a table that sort of totals up spending, the governor's proposed spending, plus realistically what needs to be added to that spending to fill it out. And at least from the legislature's standpoint, what the legislature is going to be looking at, that realistically needs to be added to it to fill it out, to make it a valid budget, and then compares that to revenue. And here's the bottom line. Adding those items, which are not many, but sort of the items necessary to make the budget a complete budget. Adding those items, which represent costs necessary to maintain state services at the same level as FY25, the year we're in now, and we're talking about the FY26 budget, so which represent costs necessary to maintain state services at the same level as FY25, would result in a substantial deficit in FY26, even with a 75-25 PFD appropriation. To balance that budget, the legislature would need to reduce spending, will need to reduce spending, pass legislation to increase revenue, further reduce the PFD or draw from savings. So, we've been told all along by Burt and by Lyman and by others that 75-25 is the line. That's where we're going to draw the line. That's where the PFD, that's where we're going to stop taking from the PFD. And we're finally going to get to 75. We're going to get to 75-25. We're not going to take from the PFD anymore. Well, we've hit 75-25. We hit 75-25 this year. Actually, we're a little bit over, given where oil prices have gone. We're a little bit over 75-25. We're going to be about 76-24 this year. But when you look at FY26, it's clear that we're going over the edge. The graph, the chart that is with that language is headed at 75-25 PFD alone won't balance the budget. And it shows the projected FY26 revenue that's in the fall revenue forecast. The dollars from the governor's proposed budget shows the surplus deficit from that, shows the effect of reducing the PFD to 75-25, the additional revenue that comes from reducing the PFD to 75-25 compared to the governor's statutory PFD, shows a slight surplus from that if you reduce to 75-25 and use the governor's budget, you would have a slight surplus, 30 some odd $30 million. But then adds the additional K through 12 funding to match FY25. Remember what Ledge Finance is doing here is trying to get back to FY25 service levels. You add the K through 12 funding necessary to match FY25. The projected Medicaid additions in Medicaid that the administration itself has said additional Medicaid funding is needed in order to maintain FY25 standards, and the added placeholder for contractual increases. The state is in negotiation with various employee unions right now, and this is the anticipated result of those contractual increases. And you get a deficit. You end up with a deficit of about $200 million, and that's assuming the oil prices projected in the FY26 revenue forecast hold.
Right.
It's not clear. It's not clear they're going to hold.
Right. And just to clarify, that's just the K-12 funding number that matches last year. That's not the $1,900 that we've seen, the $1,000. It's not the new stuff that we're seeing thrown around. This would just match what they spent last year. And it doesn't include defined benefits. It doesn't include royalty relief for the cook inlet or any other kind of subsidy for the cook. This is just matching.
It doesn't include the $50 million that ADA has promised, or right. ADA's said they would fund to underwrite the study that
right.
Glenfarne is going to do in the big line. I mean, it doesn't include anything other than those items. So it's showing that we've hit the wall. We've hit the wall that Burt, Lyman, and others have said is the new standard. It's the wall it's the line in the sand that they're not going to cross. We've now hit the FY26 is hitting the wall and going through the wall. And the question now is what the legislature is going to do about it. We've talked on the show for a while that we're going to get there. And if you look at these numbers, if you apply the same standards that Ledge Finance uses, and I've redone my projection numbers to reflect Ledge Finance's projected spending levels off of this baseline. We're at 81% of the POMV draw for state government to balance state government. If that's all you use to balance state government, 81% in FY26, 83% in FY27, 86% in FY28, 89% in FY29, 90% in FY30, and it just goes on. It goes on.
And again, that's assuming pretty flat. That's assuming pretty flat spending, right? I mean, on the numbers that you're talking about, with 89% of the PFD being, 89% going to government, that's with flat spending. That's no increases. That's just kind of accounting for what we got and keeping up with the Joneses. That has nothing to do with new spending, right?
Yep, exactly right, Michael. So all these people are going down to Juneau and saying, oh, we need more funding for this. We need more funding for that. There was an editorial in the Fairbanks News-Miner over the weekend. We need more funding for things that are important to the interior. And I'm sure they are important to the interior. But all of these people who are going down to Juneau and say we need funding need additional funding. This is the wall. This is the wall that Lyman and Burt said was the wall. This is the line in the sand that Lyman and Burt said over the years was the line in the sand. And so we're going to find out, what reality is. We're going to find out if they're going to support that wall or allow a breach, and then where do we go from there?
Right.
Or B, whether we're going to talk about new revenues, or C, whether we're going to talk about decreased spending in other areas to make room for even holding level at FY25 service levels.
Right.
We're going to find out. It's a big issue. You're right. The media is not talking about it yet, but it's a big issue, and the Ledge Finance overview tells us that it's here.
And if we get the spending that everybody's promising, it won't be 75-25. We'll be lucky to get 95-5. Maybe. The Michael Duke Show continues. The weekly top 3. Number 2 is Dead Ahead with Brad Keithley. Back with more right after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show, because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we're in the commercial break right now. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Just the verbiage in this piece, and I'm going to throw it back up there again because it's so again, that just right there. 75-25 alone won't balance the budget. And if we just held steady, I mean, and that is so pie in the sky, the idea that somehow we're only going to hold steady because everybody's promising everybody everything. New retirement program, new this, new schools funding, new that, all that, we will still be $200 million in the hole, at least, with just the flat spending. I mean, it's, but my prognostication again has come true. The PFD, we're watching the death of the PFD, Brad, right now. As we speak, we are watching the slow and steady death of the PFD right now.
Yeah, I mean, we drew a line in the sand at the statutory level, blew through that like there was nothing to it. Drew a line in the sand at 50-50, blew through that like there was nothing to it. And then Burt and Lyman, and I want to emphasize this over and over and over and over again. These guys said 75-25. That's what we need. We'll be able to survive at 75-25. We'll hold the line at 75-25. I'm sure there's places where Bryce is on the line. Neil Foster is on the line. I'm sure you can find everybody saying 75-25 is what we need. We'll hold the line there. That's what they said. We're at that point. What are they going to do? And yes, if they breach that line, Chuck Kopp said we're going to balance the budget without overdrawing from the ERA. And I and others have taken that to mean we're going to balance it through PFD cuts, because he certainly didn't talk about new revenue. And he said, in fact, there would not be new oil revenue, that we would not go back in and address oil taxes. So, I mean, they're setting up the rate on the PFD. And once you breach the 75-25 line that everybody has said is their line in the sand, once you breach that, I don't know where you stop.
Well, I mean, I don't think you do. I don't think you do. I think a lot of this is just platitudes that people have said over the years. And I think in their heart of hearts, they realize that it was just a platitude to keep you satiated in the short term. They realize, I mean, again, to me, Brad, my main thrust has always been, since 1999, I've been saying this, when they made that first run at the PFD, I said the main goal is to get access to the corpus. That's the whole point. They eventually want to get access to the corpus. And we saw that end run. We saw that play last year, which is still not dead, but where they were talking about combining the ERA into the corpus. about creating one solid fund and then just drawing out. That's what it is. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's just platitudes to keep us satiated and satisfied and quiet and quiescent until they can get that big get a shot at that big pot of money.
I think part of it, Michael, too, was they thought there was such room. I mean, we tried to draw the line in the sand at POMV 50/50, right?
Right.
And they breached that. I think part of it was they thought there was so much fiscal room between POMV 75/25 or between POMV 50/50 and 25/75 that they wouldn't use it up, at least for a long period of time. They'd be safe in making the statement. Well,
right.
It's like 3 years later. And we're there. And what you don't anticipate, the way we have set this state up, what you don't anticipate is oil revenues. And if oil revenues go down on you, the oil revenues don't stick to the schedule that you think they're on, and they go down on you, then all of a sudden, the fiscal space you thought you had goes away, because a large part of that fiscal space was based on the oil revenue level.
Yeah, I mean, no. Chris over on YouTube says not platitudes, lies. They just didn't want. They don't just want access to the corpus. The real target is the future of all Alaska natural resources. I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I think that's kind of where we're at. But access to the corpus makes all their dreams come true as big status. That's what they really want. All right, here we go. We're jumping back into it. Brad Keithley.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3 continues as we mourn the death of the PFD. I mean, I think this might be the first year that somebody actually says something about it, because they're going to have to. They can't just keep saying, 75-25 will be great. Oh, no, 80-20. Oh, no, 85-15. Oh, 90-10. I mean, they're going to have to actually say, and like Brad said, and even the Ledge Finance document said, they're going to have to talk about new revenues. Everybody was so down on Ben Carpenter for even suggesting that part of the solution might be some form of taxation or something else. It's inevitable. I've been saying this for 5 years. It's inevitable that we will reach that point because this legislature cannot control itself. Anyway, one of the big things that I'm sure is going to be one of the big elephants in the room, of course, is the Cook Inlet gas shortage issue. And Brad's got a question. What the heck is ENSTAR doing now? Brad, what's going on now?
It's hard to follow the bouncing ball that's going on with ENSTAR in the Cook Inlet. Just for reference, I pulled up a couple of older news articles that sort of defined where this ball has gone so far. There's the news article from the middle of 2023 that reports on the presentation by ENSTAR and BRG consultant, the consultant that the Cook Inlet utilities, the South Central utilities, hired to look at the gas situation. The presentation that BRG and ENSTAR made to the Public Utilities Commission, or the Regulatory Commission of Alaska, as we call it now, talking about the Cook Inlet shortage and the options that the state was facing, and all the alternatives that the state was facing. The most cost-effective of which, the lowest cost of which, was imported LNG. That was the middle of 2023, and that in that comment. Or in that report, they said we were going to finish sort of the next phase of this report by the end of 2023, and we would be back and report at the beginning of 2024 about what direction we were going. We would have an aligned direction. We would have completed the consultant's report. We would have an aligned direction on what direction we were going, and we would be back to report to the commission. Well, we've never seen the second phase of that report. It's never, ever, ever been released. The utilities didn't come back to the commission, publicly at least, at the end of 2023 or the beginning of 2024 to explain what direction they were going. The next set of headlines is from, I pulled up the Frontiersman, the article by Tim Bradner in the middle of July 22nd, 2024. And the headline is, ENSTAR tells regulators it will have a plan to import LNG by year end. And it reports on a filing that that ENSTAR had made, an application that ENSTAR had made with the Public Utilities Commission, with the RCA, Regulatory Commission of Alaska, for $50 some odd million in pipelines to be built over near Port McKenzie, in anticipation of using Port McKenzie, building facilities at Port McKenzie for gas offtake off of a floating LNG facility, the pipes necessary to bring that gas that would come off the barge, come off the ships at Port McKenzie, and connect into the ENSTAR system, and through the ENSTAR system into the rest of the utility grid, into the gas-fired generation plants that the electric utilities use. And that was the plan in the middle of July 22nd, 2024. ENSTAR filed for, got approval for the new pipelines that they were going to build over near Port McKenzie. And they told the commission at that time that they would have contracts, they would have a plan in place by the end of 2024 around this proposal that they had made at Port McKenzie. Well, the next thing we have is August of 2024. We have a press release or a statement during their earnings call by a company called Accelerate Energy, which is a floating LNG company, that they were in negotiations with Cook Inlet Utilities, and that they were deep in negotiations and anticipated having a plan in place by the end of the year. And that would line up with what ENSTAR told the RCA in the middle of 2024 about what it was doing over at Port McKenzie. So we get to the end of 2024, and the really interesting thing is the way this leaked out. In the middle of so Dunleavy has the conference where he talks about the big LNG line and talks about they've entered into this contract with a major player, quote, major player,
right?
His
foxhole conversion too, because he was against it the whole time, and all of a sudden,
well, yeah, this is the export line that we've entered into it. Contract with a major player. Then Landfield, the Alaska landmine, gets wind that it's Glenfarne, posts, says that they understand this unnamed player that the governor's talked about is Glenfarne, and Glenfarne issues a release. And in the middle of the release, it says it's been talking to ENSTAR and has an exclusive agreement with ENSTAR. I don't think ENSTAR was ready for this, but has an exclusive agreement with ENSTAR around a project not at Port McKenzie, not at the existing LNG facility that we have down on the Kenai, but a grassroots new LNG import facility at the location where the export facility, the LNG export facility, is supposedly going to be built, adjacent to the old LNG, the existing LNG plant down in Kenai, the one that's now owned by Marathon, adjacent physically in land, but a brand new facility that would be built at that point. And so all of a sudden, Glenfarne, and I don't think ENSTAR was ready for this. Glenfarne announces that they've got a deal with ENSTAR on how, as part of this overall deal, that they've got a deal with ENSTAR for importing LNG. So last week, ENSTAR, John Sims, goes into the RCA and lays out what its plan is. Now, it's just ENSTAR. They're not talking on behalf of the other utilities. So we don't know if this is a joint plan. It all started out as a joint plan, a joint study. We were all going to be cost effective and come to this conclusion together. Now ENSTAR is off on its own, talking about its own plan for an import facility at the site in Nikiski, the new site in Nikiski. So they're talking about a deal. This is not a done deal. So they're talking about the potential of striking a deal with a thinly capitalized, a small cap company, Glenfarne, which frankly is not a big company at all by any stretch of the imagination. A small cap company that doesn't own the land at Nikiski. It would get that land, the rights of that land, maybe as part of the bigger deal on the big LNG project, but doesn't own the land. Neither does ENSTAR. So they're talking about a project on land neither one of them owns, And they're talking about it. Sims says during his discussion with the RCA that, I'm comfortable. We're going to get to this in 2030, 2031. And I think we have enough supply. ENSTAR has enough supply to get there. Well, not the other utilities may not, but ENSTAR thinks it has enough supply to get there when this deal finally hits home. Bob Pickett, who I respect greatly as an RCA commissioner. He's been around since Sarah Palin. He's been on the RCA commission. He's seen, dumb ideas come and go. He's seen smart ideas come and go, but he's seen a lot of ideas out there. Bob Pickett, during this RCA hearing, tells Sims that he doesn't think he's concerned that he doesn't think this deal is going to land in time, if it lands at all. And really basically says, what the hell are you doing now? Sims is very calm, as Sims is about most things. Sims is very calm, says, well, we're going to get this deal home. But we don't know what the deal is. I mean, ENSTAR hasn't filed anything to outline what the deal is. ENSTAR says it has this exclusive agreement with Glenfarne to do the deal, but it hasn't released what the exclusive agreement is, what the terms of the exclusive agreement are. If ENSTAR has tied its hands in an exclusive deal with this one company that has never built an LNG import facility, is trying to build 2 LNG export facilities, but hasn't gotten those done yet, hasn't gotten those to FID, is a small cap company. If ENSTAR's tied its hands to this project on land that neither of them own, if ENSTAR's tied its hands to this project, we may be in for a heck of a mess. So the question is, what the heck is ENSTAR doing? I mean, and that was basically Bob Pickett's question. What the heck are you doing, ENSTAR? Because there's no consistency through all these themes. There's no next step. We're following one step with the next step. The next step always seems to be on, some other playing field, as opposed to the playing field that they said they were on, up to a given point in time. It is time to have concerns about what ENSTAR is doing. It's past time, really, but it's certainly time now to have concerns about what ENSTAR is up to and what the terms of this deal with Glenfarne is, and if ENSTAR has tied his hands into a deal that's somehow dependent on the bigger pipeline deal working, because the bigger pipeline deal isn't going to go.
So you were saying that they were surprised by the Glenfarne deal. That this kind of caught them by surprise is what your takeaway is from this, and it kind of
the public
their plans, or what?
The public announcement of it was, I mean, at the Dunleavy press conference, remember there was all this reference to this unnamed company that AGDC was working with for the big pipeline, for the big export pipeline. This unnamed company they were working with. Well, about 5 days later, it leaks that it's Glenfarne. And then Glenfarne, in its press release, ENSTAR hadn't said anything about working with the same company that AGDC was working with. And then about 5 days later, it leaks that it's Glenfarne. And Glenfarne then, in response, issues a press release saying, yes, it's us. We're doing this deal with AGDC. We're going down the road with AGDC. And then in the next paragraph says, oh, and by the way, we're doing one with ENSTAR too, about an import facility. ENSTAR hadn't hinted at any of that. And all of a sudden, here's Glenfarne deciding to come clean with what it's doing up in Alaska. And all of a sudden it drops this paragraph in that mentions ENSTAR. And I suspect that ENSTAR was surprised to see Glenfarne release its name in the middle of all that.
Well, we've talked about why we think ENSTAR's been dragging its feet. You and I have speculated as to why. And the bottom line is that they're looking for somebody else to carry the water and foot the bill on this instead of passing it over. And I think John Sims also probably looking for a big win, because there's speculation that he may want to run for governor in the next cycle. And so he's looking for some kind of big W to put in his column. And so between those two things, that could be the main reason why they've been, because MEA and Chugach have both been like, well, we're moving ahead. We're moving ahead to the import thing. They've been talking a lot more positively about that and taking some steps, but ENSTAR has just been kind of spinning its wheels and being quiet until they couldn't be quiet anymore.
Yeah, until somebody released out from underneath, released the information out from underneath them. And here's I went back. There was an editorial by the Chugach chairman and the Chugach president a few weeks back that talked about where they were going in the cookie line. And they said they were going forward with LNG, imported LNG.
Right.
And I thought, okay, they and ENSTAR are probably working on this deal that, an ENSTAR announced in the middle of last year up at Port McKenzie, and we're proceeding forward. Now, you've really got to wonder, because Sims's presentation to the RCA doesn't mention Chugach or MEA or many of the other utilities with respect to what it's doing. And in fact, implies that they're now on a different time schedule. When Sim says ENSTAR can hold out longer than the others, implies that they're on a longer time schedule than the others. So now you got to wonder what the hell Chugach and MEA are doing.
Right. Well, is ENSTAR going it alone, right? Are they doing their own, playing by their own thing and playing the long game, or what?
And here's the deal, Michael. These aren't cheap things to build.
Right.
So one of the advantages of having the utilities work together was economies of scale, right? We're going to build one facility
and
that's going to handle, that shares the demand of all the players. Now you have the impression that maybe we have two facilities coming. ENSTAR has one on land it doesn't own, and the person it's entered into the contract with doesn't own. ENSTAR's on going one way, and Chugach and MEA are going another way, and we may end up with two facilities with the costs layered on of two facilities. It's a mess.
Yeah. Well,
and there's two ways to get this cleaned up. One is the RCA steps up and says, look, you may have the obligation to propose this stuff. You may have the obligation to build this stuff, but we have the obligation to have oversight over you on this stuff. Tell us what the hell's going on. Or the legislature does that.
One thing for sure, we know who's going to pay for it one way or the other. That would be us. Just wanted to point that out. All right, we got to go. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Weekly Top 3 continues. Number 3, dead ahead.
What is that?
Common sense. Regularly heard on American radio. Michael Duke Show. Radio.
I mean, at some point, somebody's got to call. I mean, at some point, somebody's got to call the ball and say, hey, whoa, wait a second. Do we need duplication of effort? Do we need two different facilities at, $50 million at whatever the cost? I mean, it's huge money.
Well, it's more than that.
Yeah. I mean, it's huge money, right? 50, 100, 200 million, however much it is. Do we need two facilities? And why are we working at cross purposes? And why is ENSTAR continuing to drag its feet, only getting dragged out into the light when somebody slips up and mentions something about what's going on? I mean, again, betting on the if come is never going to work out for you, right? Never going to work out. You can't be like, oh, yes, we're going to build this. Now that we have this, we know we're going to have pipe by 2035. By the way, you're going to run out of gas in 2027. So, I mean, no big deal. But, 2035, it's insane. And it's like everybody's waiting around for the legislature to do something, like they are decisive and have got an idea of what's going on.
Well, and the legislature has no business in this, right? The utilities have a certificate, have an obligation in exchange for their monopolies. The utilities have an obligation to provide adequate service at reasonable cost. It's the utilities' obligation to do this. It's the Regulatory Commission of Alaska's obligation to oversee that the utilities, because they're monopolies, because there's no alternative for ratepayers to go to, for consumers to go to, if the utilities blow this, is the RCA set up to oversee it. That we've got a system in place to handle this. The legislature has no business getting involved in this. The only time the legislature needs to get involved in this is if the RCA doesn't do its job in oversight of this. And the RCA is right at the cutting edge of not doing it, right at the bleeding edge of not doing its job in terms of oversight of this. But we don't need. I mean, what we don't need is the legislature saying, oh well, we need to give more royalty relief. We need to give out more dollars to producers. We need to bear some of the costs of these import facilities ourselves. It's a mess, Michael. And I don't think I emphasized enough the concern I have about ENSTAR being tied to Glenfarne. Glenfarne's big objective here is to do the big line, the AKLNG line, and to take over the AKLNG line. That's where their money is going to be made. I don't know how the heck ENSTAR got tossed into this, but they did somehow. But the Glenfarne deal is the Glenfarne deal with AKLNG is far from done. Far from done. I mean, even Frank Richards said the contracts are months away, far from done. And actually doing something depends on financing, and they haven't even remotely got the financing put together yet. So is ENSTAR the tail on the dog? Is the ENSTAR deal with Glenfarne the tail on the dog while Glenfarne works on the big deal? Cook Inlet can't stand that sort of, Cook Inlet's not on the same time frame that the big line's on. And so if ENSTAR is waiting around on Glenfarne to sort of look back and concentrate on its deal with ENSTAR once it has its deal with the big line in place, because that's the only time Glenfarne will get rights to the land that this proposed facility goes on, then we're just sitting around twiddling our thumbs, waiting on something that likely will never happen. But if it's going to happen, it's going to be months down the road. ENSTAR needs to be on the job now, needs to be filing applications, need to be filing for permits, needs to be putting together the deal to have the gas together. The utilities, Cook Inlet utilities, need to be doing that now, and they're not.
Everybody's waiting for Uncle Sugar to open up his pocketbook and give him some money. That's and of course they will, because they have to do something, right?
But Uncle Sugar, go back to the first segment. Uncle Sugar has no money.
Yeah, he opens it up and the little moths come out of the wallet. That's what's there. There's IOUs in the wallet. I mean, that's the problem. But we've gotten so used to that in this state. That's what everybody's doing. Everybody's waiting for the state to come up and belly up to the bar and buy drinks for the house. That's what they're waiting for right now.
Well, hopefully they'll be waiting a long time for that, because Uncle Sugar has no money. Let's go back to segment one. Let's go back to what LEGFIN Finance told us.
But I know that, Brad. You and I both know that. But do you think that the legislature is going to have that aha come to Jesus moment where they realize, ooh, we can't do that? Do you really think that they're going to be like, we've got to cut some stuff? We can't give all this stuff. We've been talking about it for a year. We're going to give you all this new funding. We're going to do all this new school stuff. We're going to do do you really think that they're going to, come to that, look at it and go, oh, I guess we can't? What? PFD draw, CBR draw.
Burt and Lyman turned out to be liars. Burt and Lyman turned out when they said that they were going to draw the line in the sand at 75-25, they were liars.
Yeah. Well, won't be the first time that politicians turned out to be liars. All right. Won't be the first time the politicians turned out to be mistaken, to be more polite. But this is this whole thing is just so astonishing to watch. All right. 10 seconds. Here we go. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. The weekly top 3. Let's continue on to number 3. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell. Let's do this thing. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay, Brad Keithley, weekly top 3 continues down to the last segment here for today. And today, the final one, we're going to talk about political mutism. The ability to mutate and morphism, camouflage, the chameleon effect. What are we talking about here, Brad?
No. Selective mutism is something different.
Okay.
So selective mutism is defined by the health service as an anxiety disorder where a person is unable to speak in certain social situations, such as with classmates at school or relatives.
Okay.
They do not see very often. It's muted. They go mute.
Being mute, right? Being mute, not being mutable, but being mute. Okay, got it.
They can't talk in certain situations, and evidently not for you, but for those people who watch The Big Bang Theory over the years, it's the anxiety disorder that Raj, the character that played Raj, suffered from. He couldn't talk in the presence of women. Raj couldn't talk in the presence. He could talk when he was with his friends, his bros. He could talk when he was, dealing with scientific matters with other males, but he couldn't talk in social situations in the presence of women. He had selective mutism in those situations. And I'm using that term to describe what I'm seeing from certain legislators, maybe all legislators, if I looked at it hard enough, but certainly certain legislators and certain commentators with respect to the issues that the legislature is going to be dealing with this year, the issues that the legislature should be dealing with this year. It really came to mind hardest when I was reading a blog by Matt Buxton. Matt Buxton, for years, was a respected reporter up at the Fairbanks News Miner. I read Matt's work as often as he wrote it, as quickly as I could after he wrote it, because I really respected his insights into the political process in Alaska. A few years ago, Matt went over and became a blogger, left the News Miner and became a blogger, and increasingly has identified himself as a progressive blogger, taking the progressive side of things. And in his most recent Friday memo, Alaska memo, which he writes in advance of the coming legislative session, he talks about the focus on working class issues. While there are many unknowns about the years ahead, there are many reasons to be optimistic about the incoming bipartisan coalitions in the Alaska House and Senate, which have made addressing working class issues like education and retirement's a key part of their platforms. Well, there is no more, in my opinion, there's no more a working class issue, no greater working class issue than the PFD. No greater working class issue than the discriminatory, regressive, hugely disproportionate take of income from middle and lower income Alaska families through PFD cuts, a targeted tax on middle and lower income, which are classified as working class families. No greater issue than that on the revenue side. And yet, Matt writes this entire column focused on talking about how the House and Senate are going to focus on working class issues without mentioning the PFD once. It's mutism. I mean, the progressives, the moderates, just don't want to talk about the PFD because that's how they're financing all of their special projects, all of their special spending that they want to accomplish. And they just don't talk about the elephant in the room. They just don't talk about the impact of PFD cuts on working class Alaska families. Another example of it, I was reading the Alaska Current, which is sort of the left's version or the moderates version of Must Read Alaska. And in another article written by Matt Buxton, this on incoming Representative Kai Holland from South Anchorage. The title of it is Independent Kai Holland Brings Entrepreneurial Spirit to Juneau. And the entire column is focused on Kai's background as an entrepreneur, proposals Kai is going to have in terms of legislation for, identifying entrepreneurial policies that the state ought to adopt, pursuing entrepreneurial policies that support entrepreneurs that the state ought to adopt. Well, there's no greater issue to entrepreneurs than access to capital. And in terms of small businesses, small startups, there's no better capital. We've seen economic analyses of this. There's no better capital available to small entrepreneurs, to startups than PFDs. They come in a chunk. They come at one time, are an available source of capital to small businesses and entrepreneurs to help get them started. We've seen testimony to that effect, that's what PFDs are used for. And so we go through this entire article. Matt goes through this entire article, including an interview with Kai at various places, or quotes from Kai at various places about what's needed to create entrepreneurial spirit in Alaska, to create entrepreneurial opportunity in Alaska. No mention of the PFD. In fact, no mention of capital formation. in the entire article. It's just mutism. It's just, we're not going to talk about that thing because we don't want to talk about that thing, because that thing's, while it's important to us, while it's important to working class Alaska families, while it's important to entrepreneurs, we just don't want to talk about it. We're going to go mute about approach.
Right.
Mute about that approach.
We're not going to say the quiet part out loud because we know that it will offend. We know that we don't want to say it out there just because we know people will be upset about it, and we want to kind of slide it in.
Well, we want access to the money. I mean, basically is what it is. Those who claim to be concerned about working class families, they want the money. Instead of giving the money to the working class families, they want the money to bring it through government, to direct it through government employees to specific segments of Alaska families, which aren't just limited to the working class Alaska families. They also include the top 20%. But we want to control that money. We don't want working class Alaska families to have that money themselves. That would make their lives better, would give them capital formation for entrepreneurial efforts. We don't want them to have that money. So we're not going to talk about it. Here's the thing that really stung me, or really got me going at the end of Matt's article about Kai. A top-down approach, this is quoting Kai, a top-down approach to economic growth where state officials and legislators pick and choose the winners, Holland said, doesn't work nearly as well as when innovation emanates from the ground up. It's an old school view to think that we can have this perfect knowledge to pick some bright, shiny direction and create a plan for the next big thing. What we've learned from economic development is you have to have this iterative process that sees the opportunities and takes the next step to move that direction. Well, the opportunities are created only if the entrepreneurs have access to capital.
Right. Exactly. You missed a whole point in there. 1 minute, Brad. 1 minute. Fine.
Well, you did miss the whole point. The whole point is it shouldn't be top down, yet the funding mechanism they're using and the funding mechanism that they're ignoring is top down. It's taking money into the state as opposed to leaving it in the hands of Alaska families, taking it into the state so the state can decide who gets the money and who gets to be the winners and losers. It's this mutism is just undoing everything they claim that they're trying to support.
Yeah, well, but again, this is what they've been bum about this whole subject the whole time. They're never touching on it, and the news media is mostly complicit. Like you said, this current article doesn't mention it once. What's his face? Matt Buxton doesn't mention it once. It's like it's one of the biggest economic drivers in the state, and it's like as long as the state's taking care of the private economy, we really don't care. That's the message that continues to be sent here. Brad Keithley, Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets, the weekly top 3. Brad, thank you so much for coming on board.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
Folks, we're hoping to hear from Nick Begich in the next hour. Fingers crossed. We'll see you then. I mean, and I know Kim just said we need a deep clean of legislators. We've tried. But there's that crew, there's that small cadre of business as usual people who've been there for, since Christ was a corporal, and here we are. They're still driving the bus. They're still doing it. And they've, in some terms, corrupted some of the newer people that have been brought in with the same kind of thinking. I mean, and now we've got a new slate of legislators, some of whom we're already on board the bandwagon of we've got to spend it all because you can't be trusted to spend your own money and the private economy doesn't matter. I have to laugh when he's like, oh, he's an entrepreneur and he's doing all this. Is really? Because that's how you'd run a business? You have to have an iterative process. You have to have it's, oh man.
Yeah. The paragraph that really sent me into the stratosphere was a top-down approach to economic growth where state officials and legislators pick and choose the winners, Holland said, doesn't work nearly as well when innovation emanates from the ground up. Yet, the PFD, sucking up the PFD, diverting the PFD to government so government can decide where to spend it instead of individuals, is the biggest top-down program you possibly can have.
Right.
That's the one that's sucking up, that's taking capital out of the hands of Alaska citizens that they need to start, that they would use to start new businesses, that they would use to be innovative, that they would use to have hobbies they could turn into businesses. It's capital that if you put it into the hands of people will do a number of things, including turnover more times in the Alaska economy, the local Alaska economy, than being spent by the state. It will generate more economic growth. Cutting that off and diverting that money into the state is the biggest top-down program in this state's history. And yet it's one that Holland and Buxton and all of the other people who write about this stuff don't talk about at all. They just go mute whenever that issue comes up, because they don't want to confront it.
Well, and in all fairness, even people like Suzanne Downing and others, if they touch on the PFD, it's just like a brief. They don't ever get down into the weeds on, fiscally, does this make sense or anything else? And it's frustrating. It's frustrating to watch, for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, Republicans have their own programs, right? We want to help out Cook Inlet. We want to give revenue back to producers.
Yeah, absolutely.
In Cook Inlet. I mean, it's just, and Julie Colomb had the child care situation. It's just the child care program. It's just, everybody's got a program they need revenue for. And they'll just grab the revenue that's going to middle and lower income Alaska families without even thinking about it.
Yeah, we want to cut, but not my program. That's and that's a problem nationwide. Oh, we want to cut, just not my program, because my program's important. The rest of them can be cut, but not realizing that austerity has got to be across the board. If you're going to make cuts, everybody's got to feel the pain. It can't be not in my backyard. Because eventually arithmetic is going to win. I mean, there's just no, and we're seeing it this year in Alaska, like you were talking about earlier with that projection that said, 75-25, not going to fill the bucket this year. So it'll be 84-15. And then next year, as things continue to increase, it'll be even, right? I'm not wrong, right? Arithmetic is going to win in the end.
You're not wrong, Michael. I mean, we let legislators, all of whom are in the top 20% themselves by virtue of the pay increase that they got. We let legislators decide that they're going to exempt themselves from having to pay for these programs by using PFD cuts. They're going to exempt themselves and their donors, their friends, their donors who are also in the top 20%. We're going to exempt them from having to pay for these programs. But we're not going to stop the programs. We're just going to continue exempting our friends from the programs, even if we get to the line in the sand that Burton Lyman drew at 75-25. We're going to keep going,
right?
Because we're going to keep exempting our friends, and we're going to keep these programs going. It's a mess.
Yeah. Well, and here's where we live. And being able to tell all the folks later on that I told you so is not nearly as satisfying, I don't think, for either me or Brad. But he and I have been talking about this for 10 years together, and another 10 years probably previously. I was talking about this 20 years ago, this same kind of thing, that this was the ploy. The ploy was to get access to the corpus, to be able to grow the size and scope of government outside of the control of the public. That's what it's about.
Scott Goldsmith started telling us in 2008 this was coming. You in 1999, but Scott Goldsmith started writing papers in 2008 that this was coming.
Yeah.
And if you follow those papers, we've just gone down that track, the track that he outlined that the state was on, that everybody at the time said, oh no, we'll never do that.
Yeah. Maybe they used it as a roadmap. Oh, Scott's got a good plan here. Maybe we should use this. It's completely frustrating. All right, Brad. Well, thank you so much for coming on board. As always, it was painful and enlightening all at the same time. So thank you for being part of it today.
Well, maybe you're going to get ibuprofen as a gift here during the break.
I think I might need some ibuprofen, some ibuprofen in the one hand and Excedrin in the other, and, just kind of double fisted at this point. So, all right, Brad Keithley, thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate you coming on board.
Michael, as always, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. In the wings, I see him, the man, the myth, the legend. Congressman Nick Begich joins us from Washington, D.C. Man, look at that. He's already got us. He's got us all framed in there. How you doing, my friend? How you doing?
I'm doing well. We're doing well. We're working hard. I've got my committee assignments, and I'm on resources, transportation infrastructure, and science, space, and technology. We've got a really strong nexus for Alaska. There's a lot going on.
Well, I'm excited to talk about it. Hold on a second, Nick. We're about to jump in and start the show, and then we're going to come to you, and we'll be ready to go. So hold the line, my friend. He's using his. I hope his arm doesn't get tired holding that phone out there. He needs a tripod, is what he needs. All right, here we go. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio. Let's do this.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends. Welcome to hour 2 of this Tuesday edition. We just finished up with Brad Keithley from Alaskans for Sustainable Budgets. Educational and painful? Yes, it was, but that's okay. That's okay. We're going to get more. We're going to be joined right now by brand new, freshly minted Congressman Nick Begich joins us this morning from Washington, D.C., still, I'm sure, in his post-inaugural hangover state, ready to go. I saw lots of pictures. I saw lots of commentary. Congressman Nick Begich joins us right now, live from the Capitol. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a new day in America. President Trump came yesterday, and he came in swinging. He's got a strong agenda. The Congress is there, ready to make that happen. I know that within the Republican conference on the House side, there's a lot of unity. We recognize that this is a unique window of opportunity for our nation, and we have to make sure we take advantage of every single moment. Every day counts, and we are hitting the ground running. I've just gotten my committee assignments all sorted out. I'm on the Natural Resources Committee. I'm the vice chair of the subcommittee on energy and mineral resources, as well as a member of the Oversight Committee on Natural Resources. So there's a lot that we're going to be digging into as it relates to the last 4 years under the Biden administration, but there's a lot that we can do going forward as a part of that Energy and Minerals Subcommittee. So very excited about getting started on the Resources Committee. I'm on Transportation and Infrastructure. There'll be an announcement soon about the subcommittees that I've been assigned there. It's not yet public, but will be shortly. And then I'm also on Science, Space, and Technology, which is an emerging set of opportunities for Alaska as well. So we're in a great position to advocate for the state in the House of Representatives and to be a part of the effort that President Trump outlined yesterday for opening up the state of Alaska again.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to unpack there, because I think first and foremost, let's take the last one first. 3 committee assignments as a freshman congressman, and especially vice chair of mineral. I mean, that's some real horsepower in your first offing. And to me, we were talking about it on the show when it was announced. To me, that shows that you did a lot of pre-work. There was a lot of legwork that went into pressing the flesh, shaking hands, talking to people, convincing them that you were the guy. There was a lot of work that went into that. It looks like it might pay off.
There was a great deal of work. It was like running a second campaign, actually. You know, I came down to D.C. multiple times, met with many members of Congress who are involved in the steering committee decision-making process for committee assignments, and, you know, really impressed upon them just how important Alaska is for the whole nation, right? I mean, that's really the story that needs to be told again in the House is, look, you know, Alaska's great. It's a great place to visit. It's beautiful. We all recognize that. But we're so much more than that if we can have the ability to responsibly produce the resources that we're blessed with in Alaska, whether that be oil and gas, minerals, timber, fish, you name it. We have what the rest of the nation needs. And what I keep telling folks down here, and I will continue to tell folks, is that the road back to American prosperity has to begin in Alaska. When we talk about the global supply chains and the realignment of those supply chains and the plan that President Trump has outlined for our nation, we have to start with resources. That's what Alaska can provide. We can provide that. We can provide smelting and refining capacity, energy that lets us build that pathway to energy dominance. Those are all things that Alaska has to be a part of. And this is a historic opportunity for Alaska to be a part of that national conversation again.
Right. The other thing you mentioned is this finite window. And it's one thing that we seem to have forgotten. I mean, I remember Newt Gingrich and the Contract with America and all that. There were some squandered opportunities in the past. We've had a huge red wave. We've had a mandate come through. And you're right. There's a very finite amount of time between now and the midterms to be able to get some stuff done, because we know historically when these kind of shifts happen that during the midterm, usually it flips back at some point. And so we have a very small window to get things done. Are we going to shoot ourselves in the foot, or are we working towards, really getting something on the books that's lasting and concrete, something that can't be flip-flopped later on?
That's right. I think we've got that unity right now, and I hope that we keep it, because we need all corners of the conference, from what we might call the moderate Republicans over to the conservative Republicans. We've got to stay on the same page, because if we fractionalize on the House side, we're not going to be able to deliver on the things that we all know need to be done for the benefit of the nation. So I think there's been a lot of unity in the conference. Certainly I've felt it. There's a lot of camaraderie and a collaboration that's happening inside the conference. And I've received a great deal of respect from my other colleagues in the House, and as I'm telling Alaska's story, they're listening, and I think that bodes well for all of us back home.
Now, President Trump obviously mentioned Alaska specifically several times. There's some things going on. He issued some executive orders. You seem pretty excited about some of the stuff that he's got going on. What are your thoughts on the highlights of what happened yesterday?
Well, we had been working with the Trump members of the Trump administration off and on behind the scenes for the last several weeks, making Alaska's case, as have many others, and specifically other members of the delegation, Dan Sullivan, Lisa Murkowski, but also folks who have been in sort of that Alaska orbit in D.C. for a long time. So when the executive order came out, we were aware of a lot of it, but I went through it at 1:30 in the morning Eastern, and read every word. And I'll tell you right now, if you haven't had an opportunity yet to review that executive order, I'm talking to everyone listening, take the time, pull it up. It's on the White House's website. It's probably out on our social media channels already as well. But check that out, because what you'll see is President Trump isn't just allowing us to develop in ANWR. This is way bigger than that. This is ANWR, NPRA, Ambler District Mining Road, removing the Tongass roadless rule. It's all the things that we've been working on for years and years and years to make sure that Alaska has the ability to produce our resources again. It's all in there, and it's incredible. And Donald Trump has recognized that Alaska is centerpiece, is a cornerstone to his strategy, and he made that clear in this executive order. So I would encourage everybody, go through the details. I know it's a lot, but spend the time, because you'll see that what we have done through this executive order is lay the groundwork to open the state of Alaska again. Now, President Trump is going to be there for 4 years, but after that, that's it, right? So we've got to make sure that we lock in Alaska's right to produce these resources permanently. And that's where the Congress comes in, and that's where I'll be working with my colleagues in every opportunity that I get to make sure that aspects of that executive order can't be changed easily by a future president, that we lock in Alaska's ability to continue to produce no matter what happens in the executive office going forward.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of my questions is, how do we prevent this flip-flopping that we're seeing from administration to administration? And your assertion is, of course, Congress has to do its job. Congress has to go in and actually pass the laws so that it can't be just flipped by fiat or executive order down the road. So this is the time that you guys really have to shine and work together.
That's absolutely true. I mean, and there are opportunities for us to lock this down in law. And one of those first opportunities is the budget reconciliation set of actions. And, this is where being on these committees really matters, because the budget instructions come from those committees. They get sent over to budget sends them back. And when we provide a line item list of all the ways in which we're going to hit those budgetary targets. And Alaska, being on the Resources Committee is a central part of how we're going to hit some of those budgetary targets that are laid out in budget reconciliation. So that is very important. The other reason it's really important is because unlike nearly every other process in the Congress, budget reconciliation only requires 50+1 votes in the Senate. And so normally you've got to get something through the Senate with 60 votes, and we don't have 60 Republicans in the Senate. So budget reconciliation is a really important vehicle for us to make sure that we're hitting the revenue targets that we've laid out, and Alaska's centerpiece to that.
Let's move on to your and my favorite topic, which is, of course, arithmetic. Talking about budgets, you're talking about budget reconciliation and everything else. Of course, one of the problems is that Congress has not been doing regular order. We have not been doing, it's kind of this one big turducken. It's, it's not a regular order in 12 different budget bills and everything else. And I know that's something that you're passionate about. I know it's something that Speaker Johnson had promised but failed to deliver. I know that he barely survived the revote here and his call and his confidence. So what is the possibility of Congress actually returning to regular order, to doing its 12 budget bills, and to trying to bring some of this spending under control? Because that's what's going to kill us, right?
I think it is. The regular order is going to help us a lot. And I think there's a really good chance we'll be able to get back to regular order with those 12 appropriations packages. We've got to do more than that. There's a number of other components to this. The appropriations process generally deals with the discretionary portion of spending. We've got to look at other spending that's going on in the Congress. But, this is a new day in the House, and I think that we have the ability to get that done. There's a lot going on with the Doge caucus in the House and Senate. I'm a member of the Doge caucus, so we're looking at the budget line by line to find areas of opportunity where there's waste, there's fraud, there's abuse of the system, there's overspending, there's many situations in which the government has taken on responsibilities that are not within their constitutional authority. And so we're looking across the government at opportunities to cut that back in a responsible way so that we can get this deficit under control. Because I'll tell you what, we're never going to tame inflation unless you can get government spending under control. And we talked about it on the show many times, but the reality is that inflation is not caused by supply chain issues. It's not caused by businesses that are out there trying to price gouge. Inflation is caused by a government that spends too much money and finances that spending with the money printer when they increase that money supply. And so when you're running $2 and $3 trillion a year deficits, the only purchaser available is the Federal Reserve when they hit the print button. No one's got that kind of cash laying around to continue to finance our deficit spending. If we don't get it under control, we're going to pay a tax, and the tax is called inflation.
Right. Well, and it's not just us who's going to pay the tax. It's going to be our children, our grandchildren, and potentially cause catastrophic issues down the world, because eventually, as a world reserve currency, you can't continue to do that and have your trading partners and your borrowers and lenders still work with you. I mean, this gravy train will eventually stop if we keep moving down that road.
That's right. I'll just really quickly, my team is pulling me out of here because they're telling me I got another obligation I got to run to. But I want to comment on this before we. You're 100% right. And what people need to recognize about having the reserve currency status, why do we have it? What is the purpose of a reserve currency? A reserve currency's purpose is to be able to transmit value over time in a stable way. When you have inflation, you're not able to transmit value over time in a stable way. And so the inflationary forces that we're seeing they themselves are the threat to our reserve currency status. And the challenge, of course, is that if you walk into a Walmart, right? If you walk into your closet, if you walk into your garage, how many of those things were actually made in the United States? Very few. And the challenge that we're going to have is if we lose the reserve currency status, if we lose that trust from the rest of the world, we will not be able to live the American standard of living that we've enjoyed because we don't have the ability to produce so many of the things that we consume right now. This is also why it's so important for us to restore domestic capacity again. And that's all part of Trump's plan to make America great again. And so I'm thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to be a part of that. and I'm thrilled to tell Alaska's story in the House again. And I believe that we're going to be able to open up Alaska for the benefit of Alaskans and for the benefit of the entire nation.
Well, we're looking forward to it, Nick. Thank you so much for coming on board. We'll try and get a longer visit with you here sometime in the near future. Good luck, my friend. Congratulations, and we'll see you here. We'll see you here in the next couple of weeks. Okay.
Looking forward to it, Michael. Thanks so much.
Thanks, my friend. Appreciate it. Congressman Nick Begich, our guest here on the program today, as we continue on, which brings us up to the break. I know it's like we used to be able to sit down with him for an hour, and now the guy's so busy he's got to go off and poof, man, get on the. Anyway, it's good stuff. So we'll continue on. We'll have some thoughts on this when we return. The Michael Duke Show continues. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Chris Story will be joining us in the end of this hour to bring us our weekly life coaching lesson, and we will be back with more in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we're in the break. Woof, man, it's been a whirlwind this morning. Talk about the fastest 2 hours in radio. Dang. All right. A couple good comments that I saw here as we go through. Donna says the executive order is awesome. I agree with that. I agree that those executive orders are good. But again, what we're getting into is we're getting into that tug of war, that teeter-totter, right? One administration comes in, issues a bunch of executive orders that countermands the previous administration, who then comes in 4 years later in another administration, and it just teeter-totters back and forth because Congress hasn't been doing their job. Now, if Congress does their job, then guess what? We can do it. If Congress does the job, then it prevents the executive from being able to do a lot of that stuff. And I like it. I like it when that happens. I like it when Congress does the job that they're supposed to do. That's part of the reason why when we go back to this whole idea of regular orders and Congress actually doing what it's supposed to do instead of just passing a continuing resolution or an omnibus, it's crazy. But, there you go. Common sense. Where did you find that? And how much did that cost? As much as eggs? Holy cow. I went to get eggs yesterday. And I haven't been doing much of the shopping over the last couple of years, but I was in town yesterday and Terry said she needed some eggs. And I'm like, when did a dozen and a half eggs cost more? The last time I bought, because we got a lot of, we buy eggs by the 5 dozen box, right? That's what normally how we buy eggs is by the 5 dozen box. When did a dozen and a half eggs cost more than a 5 dozen box? And there was an empty hole for the 5 dozen box and it was like $20 something. I'm like, what is going on? Right? I mean, it's crazy, man. It's insane. I mean, it's just oof. The world reserve currency issue, that's another thing that's a deep dive that we've taken on this show in the past and that we could take on again. Nick's not wrong. I mean, essentially, being the world reserve currency actually kind of turns it into a commodity that's supposed to hold its value. But when you continually and intentionally depreciate it over and over and over again by expanding the money supply, nobody wants to hold on to it as a commodity or as a trading instrument because it doesn't hold its value. I mean, we're really shooting ourselves in the foot on this one. If we don't get a handle on that, it's going to be a thing. Bruce Tangeman said something back when Brad was talking, and I'm sorry, Bruce, I wanted to get to this. This is an actually good comment when he was talking about this new in-state thing that the governor now is all on board with, and AGDC, and everybody's all crowing about. He said even the in-state project estimate of $10 billion from a decade ago still seems to be the number thrown out. Either they are the only entity in the world not infected by inflation, or the estimate starts at 20 billion and probably ends up much higher. This actually wasn't the original comment. His original comment was, there we go. Why do you think AGDC is getting away with using the old project estimates that are a decade old? A similar project in Canada came in at 6 times over their pre-FEED, which is the forward engineering, economic design, environmental design. It's the 6 times over what they said it was going to be. He said the $40 billion AGDC product is probably already wildly uneconomical. It's probably more like 70 billion now, because those numbers are 10 years old. I mean, that's Bill Walker time, right? I mean, that's, oof, man. I guess we're coming back in. That was quick, man. Yeah, it's, I know that it was $12.89 for 18 eggs. I'm like, wow. Okay. Front end engineering and design. Thank you, Brian. I had a brain fart there and couldn't remember what feed stood for. All right, we're ready to go. We are jumping in. $26, says Rick, for 5 dozen eggs in Wasilla.
Public enema number 1. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number 1, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Okay, welcome back to the program. Thanks for coming in and joining us. I mean, a little bit of a whirlwind this morning. First, we get Brad Keithley, which is always enlightening yet painful. It's like, whenever I use analogies, and I'm using like the analogy, the medical analogy or the triage analogy, where we've talked about, getting sick from the cure, or dying from the disease and everything else. Whenever I think about a segment with Brad Keithley, I always think about it as like wound debridement, right? If you're going to debride the wound, it has to be done, but oh my God, does it hurt, right? I mean, it's just so painful to have to, scrape off all the crusty. I mean, it's just, that's kind of how I look at those, the conversations with Brad, because it's the truth, but man, is it painful. Absolutely painful. All right. So Chris Story is going to be coming up here in about, we're probably 10 minutes or so. We're going to be talking with Chris and see what's going on. We were just talking about, Nick Begich was talking about going to Walmart or going here and going there and seeing how far your dollar goes. And it just reminded me, yesterday, I went down to the store, and I haven't been grocery shopping much in the last 2 years. Mostly that's been Terry or the kids, somebody's going there. And I've been so busy the last couple of years that I really have kind of stopped going to the store. Well, the last couple of weeks, if I'm in town and we need something, I'll pick something up at the store. But Terry needed some eggs, and we go through quite a few. We like eggs around this house. We use it in, of course, all the cooking and everything else. But nothing more satisfying sometimes than a little bit of egg with sausage or something in it. Chopped or scrambled or even hard boiled eggs. Whatever. So we go through quite a few eggs, and generally speaking, we normally buy it by the 5 dozen pack because we eat a lot of eggs around here. And Terry said, get some eggs. And so I'm like, okay, I'll get, so I'm down at the store, and I'm like, I've got to be in the wrong place. I've got to keep up with, what's going on. I walk in, and there's an 18 pack of eggs. First of all, there's no 5 dozen packs. Second of all, the 5 dozen packs was like over $25. And even 18 eggs, a dozen and a half eggs, was more than I remember paying just a couple of years ago for a 10 pack of eggs. It was like $12.80 or something for 18 eggs. And I'm like, yeah. Oh, I mean, I Terry has been complaining for the last year or so about how groceries have continued to gone up. And I'm like, yeah, I understand that. But I didn't really see it in my mind until I was literally standing in the aisle looking down at the half empty shelves, first of all, which is weird when you're looking in a grocery store. And I don't know why it is. I don't know if that's a Homer thing or what. But I mean, half the shelves are not bare, but boy, it sure looks a little slim pickings, But when I'm looking at it and realizing that, yeah, jar of jam costs $8 and an 18 pack of eggs is almost $13. This is why you want to know why. You want to know why Trump got elected? You want to know why? It's because of stuff like that. Because people are walking around a grocery store going, yeah, I used to buy that, but I can't buy it no more because it's, doubled in price. I can't buy that anymore because it's double, or I have to buy a smaller jar, or we can only use it sparingly, or whatever. I mean, it's insane. It's it's crazy. But that's why Trump is the 47th president. That's why. Because he was able to enumerate that to the public. He was able to capitalize on that feeling because people, and I think, quite honestly, the Biden administration was out of touch with that whole thing. It was there. They knew it was a problem, but instead of addressing the spending and the inflationary component and everything else, they wanted to blame the evil corporations. They wanted to blame, Lay's chips for making smaller bags, or the ice cream company for making smaller ice cream cartons. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm upset at that. I'm upset at the whole. One of my favorite ice creams is Tillamook ice cream. And it was about 10 months ago. All of a sudden I was looking at the container and I realized this container is smaller. It's still the same price, but this container is smaller. It's not a half gallon of ice. So, I mean, I realize that part of that is they're trying to keep the costs at the same, but still be able to make money, yada, yada, yada. But this is why this happened. And it's just, it's that old James Carville commentary back in the Clinton years. It's the economy, stupid. It's the economy, stupid. I mean, it's crazy. So here's hoping that the new administration can turn the economy around, and especially here in Alaska, let's hope that the private economy continues to limp along, because, again, we were in a recession before we got hit by COVID. We were in a recession before COVID dropped the bomb on us, and we were starting to come out of it a little bit here in Alaska. But nobody's really talked much about it, but I don't think we've ever really fully recovered from the recession, and then COVID on top of it, and then here we are. And of course, being at the end of the supply chain, we're going to feel those effects more than anybody else. It's really crazy. And then Frank says, but the cannabis shops are stocked in Homer. Man, the cannabis shops are stocked everywhere in the state. You want to know the two things that never really suffer, even during great economic hardships? Liquor stores, cosmetic stores, and now cannabis shops. Those are the places that will always. Why? Well, because people want to drown their sorrows or smoke away their sorrows, I guess. And of course, the ladies can't do without cosmetics. So even if it is hard times, they're still going to put the mascara on. So there you go. It's crazy. And when people have to decide whether to heat or eat, or be able to eat top ramen versus ground beef or something like that, that's a tough situation, my friend. Tough. And in rural Alaska, it's even worse. I mean, we complain being down here at the end of the chain down here in Homer, or in some, community that's on the road system. But then you get to places out at, Bethel or Quinnahock or Fort Yukon or Anaktuvik or someplace that's not, it's even worse for those folks. I don't know how you do it. It's pretty crazy. So I'm encouraged to hear that Nick is continuing to push for, again, fiscal certainty for, regular order. And it really, to me, I'm really excited because I think Nick's positioning, especially in the fact that he got not just 3 committees, which is already unusual, but to get vice chair of a committee. And again, he was saying today they're announcing all the subcommittees that he's going to be a part of. I think it shows that we made a good choice in Nick Begich. I think we really did. And I'm very pleased at how that turned out and what happened with that, because that was it's what we needed. I think it's what we needed. And I also agree with what he just said when we have a limited window here, folks. We've got a finite window. Remember all those grandiose promises with Gingrich and the contract with America, or as people later called it, the contract on America, because nothing really happened. They had all these, grand plans, and they couldn't get their poop in a group, and they squandered the deal because by the next midterm, that whole thing had flipped. We have a very short window. We need to get it done, and we need to get it worked on. And I'm ready. I'm ready to get it. I'm ready to go. Anyway, what a great day. What a great day. Good conversations, and looking forward to seeing what Nick brings to the table here in the future. All right. I did vote for him. Jen, are you going to vote for him next time? I voted for him. I did vote for him. Now I voted for him second, but that was more of a protest thing. That was more of a political jab than anything else. But I did vote for Nick. He had my support. I endorsed him. All right, I'm out of time for this segment. We got to jump into it here in just a second for Chris Story. We're going to get into that. So I guess we'll go do that right now. Oh, now Kim is saying, now time to convince MD that Orange Man ain't bad. Well, I mean, again, I agree that he's definitely better than the alternative, but I still can't agree with everything that he's jumping up and down about. I don't know. What do you think? Should it be Denali? Should it be McKinley? Should it be the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America? Does it really matter? I mean, just sometimes I wonder if this is just fights that we can't win, or are we doing it just, I don't know. All right, we got to go. We're going to be back here in a moment. Back with more. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay. Screw the mountain, says Melissa. Make everything cheaper again. My kids' medical costs are outrageous. I know. We were just going over some medical stuff with one of my kids, and I was like, oof. This is a oof. All right. Let's see. Brian says the contract with America was, in my humble opinion, a bridge too far. Overpromised, didn't do a reality check. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that was a big part of it. And again, some of that infighting as well, where they just couldn't all agree to pull in the same directions. Chris says, buy eggs from your neighbors that have chickens. I'm all about that. I am all about that. If I can find, I haven't had a chance yet to find neighbors who had chickens. That's my next, that's on my list of things to do here in the near future. Maybe Chris Story has chickens. Maybe he's holding out on us and he's not telling us. He's not telling us what's going on. Well, I'd like to know. I'd like to see if we can. Maybe he can get us some chickens. Chris, it didn't work. All right, I'll call you right back. It didn't work. Hold on. This stupid thing. Man, can send a man to the moon, but we can't connect the Bluetooth properly on the first try every time, it seems like. Let's try that again. All right. Hello?
How now?
Hey, I'm just saying we could send a man to the moon, but we can't get the Bluetooth to connect properly. Anyway, hello, my friend. How are you doing?
I was going to say we could reelect the greatest president God ever made, and yet we can't connect. What's going on?
Man, some of the hyperbole around the whole presidency is just it's terrifying sometimes. I mean, I like him as much as the next guy, but it seems like some people were like
unless the next guy's Chris Story.
Yeah, the some guys, the Messiah's here, and I'm like, what the? Okay, come on, guys.
My coffee tastes better, though. I got to tell you, my coffee tastes better.
Yeah.
My dogs are happier.
I mean,
this is a great day.
I feel good, man. I feel good. It was good to watch. I mean, he had lots of great things to say. I like the fact that zero craps were given during his inauguration speech with both Biden and Clinton and everybody and Obama all sitting right behind him. And he's just like, no holds barred, just saying this is what he thinks is wrong and this is what he thinks is wrong. And this, I thought it was like, man, that's savage. You know what I mean?
It was compelling. Tell you that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Refreshing, compelling.
Yeah, it's good, and I think people are excited. I think overall, I've seen except for the 3 people in Kenai who did you see the 3 ladies in Kenai who stood up and did a protest outside of the Ammo Can Coffee in Kenai, which is the conservative social club there? 3 ladies with signs out there, resist, all this kind of stuff, and I'm just like, okay, you guys aren't reading the room. Not that, I mean, you have every right to protest, but I mean, at this point. I think a lot of people are still in shock on that side of the aisle. They just can't figure out how in the world did this happen. And I just explained to them how it happened. Eggs are, $10 a dozen. That's how it happened. That's how it happened right there. Speaking of which, you have chickens? Can I buy some eggs from you? I do. You have chickens? You have your own?
Me?
Yeah. I mean, I figured.
Hello.
Yeah, I figured
you seem like I guided.
I don't know. You're the whole
animal husbandry's top of my list.
I think you're the whole self-help guru and everything else. I figured maybe you were, had your own little micro farm and
Wagon Wheel.
Yeah.
Wagon Wheel is your source for locally harvested eggs.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna go down there and get some. But anyway, my friend, what's on the agenda for today?
The compass of conviction.
The compass of conviction. All right. Okay, good. Man, it's been just a day. I just can't believe it. All right. So we're ready to go. The compass of conviction with Chris Story. I'm going to put him back in the green room for just a second here. Bill says, Michael, you do not like Trump and we all know it. Who are you trying to BS, us or yourself? I mean, again, I voted for him. I was glad to see him win over Kamala. There's just certain things that I don't agree with, and I don't always agree with his I guess demeanor, his tact, his the way he does things. But hey, I'm here to watch. That's all it is to it. And again, the better of 2 choices, yes, absolutely. That I'm happy to see that. That's see it. Harold, I just cannot tell where Harold's at on this. He's okay. No big thing about the 8,000 pardons by Biden, but he's going to be like, you pardoned everybody on January 6th. Okay. All right. I mean, all right, let's get to it. Chris Story is our guest. The compass of compassion. Boy, I hope I remember that right. Let's get to it. Here we go. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe. Here we
go. The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Okay, welcome back. One final segment. Usually, after dealing with Brad Keithley and stuff, we still feel pretty beat up or we're upset or irritated. But then we had that conversation with Nick Begich, and that was good. That was encouraging. So I'm not nearly as daubered down as I normally am. But that's why we bring Chris Story on, to bring us up, to bring us up, to help us think about ourselves and our lives and our commitments. Let's bring him on the show today. He is going to talk with us about the compass of compassion. Although I will encourage him, if he wants to share his thoughts of the post-inauguration. Is he still in a post-inauguration bliss, or where are you at? Chris Story, good morning, my friend.
Yeah, the compass of conviction. Michael. W, remember, was a compassionate, conservative.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's right. That's right. Conviction.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I was confused.
You tell me something, and then 60 seconds later, I've already forgotten it because, well, it was you.
We've seen more of W in the last month than we have in the last 8 years.
Did you see all the pictures of him on Facebook where they were capturing, because he was making, I was just telling Terry last night, she showed me a picture and W is looking like goofy looking and stuff. And I'm like, I didn't always agree with everything that he did, but he was a guy that you felt like you could go to a barbecue and have a beer with and just sit back and enjoy. He just seemed like such a genuine guy. You didn't have to agree with him, but he just seemed like such a crazy guy. Not a crazy guy, but such a laid back kind of cool cat. And the faces that he was making at people, across the room and stuff during anyway. Yes, we've seen more of W, and I want to know, did Laura Bush find the fountain of youth? Because she looks exactly the same from 20 years ago. What's going on there? Anyway, post inauguration, you're feeling good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on top of the world, Michael. It's I knew it was going to be a great day yesterday. I knew that the air would be fresher, the water cleaner. My dogs are even happier. I mean, if that's possible for a King Charles Cavalier Spaniel to be happier than they were on the 19th, well, it's true. They are so happy. And I started thinking about this idea. I watched the Jimmy Kimmel monologue from yesterday, just so you don't have to. And he talks about, we've just elected a convicted felon, and the word convicted was in my mind. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Well, what about your convictions in life? And when you follow the compass of your own convictions, it will lead you to where you want to go. And it often has led America, I believe, the convictions that we've all shared these past 250 years has led us to this day. And it's been a compass. But you personally can use your own personal convictions and values as your own compass, your own guide. But you have to be honest about where you're starting from. You may not know where you're going to end up, or you have an idea where you want to go. But if you're not honest about where you are starting from, the best compass in the world won't help you. And that's when convictions and your principles and your core values comes into play.
Okay. All right. I could see that. I mean, that's kind of the guide work and the framework that we use in our daily lives to do what we do and make the decisions that we do. So our convictions and principles are obviously important. You're saying there's a compass to our convictions. So what, how do we decide what that is, and how does it affect us?
Two things come to play when you're talking about convictions or your beliefs, your core values, your standards that you're not going to back down from. There's certain things in life of these that we're just discussing that are worth standing your ground on. Then there's other areas whereby you can look for common ground. And if we're going to move forward collectively as the strongest individuals we can be, because this collective, this great experiment of America does depend upon each of us being as strong as possible. And then we come together, we've circled our wagons, we said, okay, these things will do for the common good, so long as it doesn't rob the individual from their own sovereignty. What are things you'll seek for, and recognize as common ground with somebody you might otherwise disagree with, without sacrificing your convictions? So using your own convictions as your compass towards where you want to go, starting where you are, and then you're going to encounter troubles, and you're going to go into the valley of the dark night, and you're going to need that compass with you. But to get out, it takes everybody, even the 3 people protesting outside the ammo can. Takes us all. So where can we find common ground absent sacrificing our core convictions and our beliefs and our principles, on which we'll not bend, on which we'll not sacrifice? So it's a complicated way to navigate through the world, but it makes the most sense to me using convictions. Some things, to your point, that you may not appreciate about somebody's delivery of a message, but did the end result match what you wanted? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I'll say the common ground is the end result, even though you differ or disagree on the approach. Some people have the bedside manner of, I watched a show the other day where a doctor was being criticized for delivering fatal news to a family while eating a candy bar. And it was, this is a fictitious show, but it made the point that, like, wait a minute, you just delivered life-changing news to this family. All they're going to ever remember is the doctor was eating a candy bar when she told us. And so it's like the bedside manner and the result, don't have to match, but we can find common ground on some things without sacrificing our convictions.
Right.
But we've got to know what they are. You've got to know what your own personal convictions are.
Well, and this has been kind of my commentary for the last 10 years on kind of this, the bifurcation of America, this divisiveness that we're seeing on, people left versus right and everything else. And I've always been trying to encourage people, find common ground. You don't have to agree on something politically, but do you have an interest that aligns or something that matches together? You can always find commonality with someone in something. And it's one of the reasons why I think we've lost kind of the ability to have just kind of discourse, is because we have become so polarized in so many ways. Finding that common ground, sticking to your convictions. I'm not saying that you don't, that you just jettison your convictions and your beliefs and your principles. But if you can, at least have some kind of conversation and find that common ground, the country and your life would be better. I'm not one that generally says, oh, I'm never going to talk to so-and-so because they believe the opposite of me politically, 100% politically. I've had some great conversations with people who I don't agree with politically on other topics, on other things. We're supposed to, we're supposed to be kind. We're supposed to love one another. We're supposed to, even those that despitefully use you, right? This is what we're supposed to do that. And we've got to still hold to our convictions. And that's, I think, to me, this idea of convictions and principles, that's where the struggle is sometimes, because you're like, I'm trying to find the good in this person. I'm trying to find the common ground, but I don't want to lose my convictions and seem like I'm acquiescing or approving of what they're doing while still finding that common ground, right?
Agreed, 100%. And I think, to your point, talking with people that you'd otherwise politically disagree with is important. It's powerful. And the expression, iron sharpens iron. Go to where there's maybe a disagreement, and it's about how you do it. So, for example, a couple of years ago, I interviewed Larry Elder, and he had just come out with Uncle Tom, the movie, and the documentary, if you will, called Uncle Tom. And I sent this to one of my most ardent liberal, like lefty friends. But we're good friends, but we politically have almost nothing in common. One thing we both have in common, in the Venn diagram of our lives, is that we're not racist. We're not people that are prejudiced to a point against a particular race of people, that we do anything untowards towards somebody of an opposite race or skin color. So I sent this to him, this interview. And he was inspired to go watch the movie. Then he came back to me, and this was his comment. Again, in the Venn diagram of our life, politics, nothing in common, nothing. Our behavior towards other people of a different race, completely in alignment. However, he said, oh, it was an interesting movie. However, they found people that don't talk like Black people talk. And I said, whoa, hold on. What are you talking about? Because there were, it was all Black people in this movie, that Larry Elder and many other people. And he goes, that's not how they really talk. And I said, do you hear yourself? So, okay, we're neither of us are racist, but you're suggesting that you can't hear that. And so we were able to have this back and forth. And I honestly don't think he ever came away with anything other than, yeah, that's not really how they talk. I know how they talk because he was from the hood. He understood. He had taught in inner city. So he's like, yeah, that's not how they actually talk. And I was like, man, my friend, you represent the left, and yet you just said one of the most horrifically bigoted things I can think of.
The monolithic, they. That's the first sign. Whenever you do something like that, where it's a monolithic they, that's the first sign that something's wrong in your thinking.
But I don't regret the conversation, and I hope I inspired him a little bit with my my outrage. What he said, I'm not sure, but I have convictions that I'll not back down from, and that's one of them. I'm not going to talk in the pejorative sense about any group or quote class of people,
right?
Just absolutely not. And so that's one of the points on my compass of my own convictions.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's important to hold true to your convictions and be able to do those things, and yet at the same time be able to find that common ground. I think, and I think you're right. I think that's the most difficult thing, is holding to your convictions while still reaching out to those people and doing, and trying to bridge that gap while holding your convictions and being a light. I guess that's also that commandment of, kind of being a light to the world. That's the important part.
As you know, I'm trying to proselytize and promulgate my concept of the Fair Tax Act,
right?
Borough-wide, Kenai Peninsula borough-wide, and so I'm having a lot of conversations with people that don't disagree with the concept, but feel like they need to disagree with me because they know we're politically misaligned. But yet, at the same time, when it really comes down to, well, yeah, I mean, senior citizens, you really do deserve a right to live in their home unimpeded by the threat of government seizure and forfeiture of their property. Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
And so we really, but okay, but aren't you a right wing radical? I'm not supposed to disagree with you, but even though, yeah, we can agree that our government was founded on, for the people, by the people, of the people. Yeah, we can agree with that, and that this is, seizure of property is bad. But so again, it's constantly finding the common ground relative to keeping in your convictions and using that as a
but I think you
forward.
I think you pointed out that the main point there. Oh, but you're a right wing, whatever. So I'm supposed to disagree with you. Who says?
Correct.
Who
Right.
says?
Exactly.
I mean, you could disagree with me politically, but that doesn't mean that you're supposed to find everything that I say disagreeable. You can disagree with my,
Right.
with my policy on side. And that's where we're at today, where, oh, you're on that side? Well, then you're dead to me and your house should burn down. Right. I mean, that's kind of the, and that's where we've gotten to this, we've got to find that common ground. And that's something we try and do here on the show. And we hope to do a better job. All right. You got 90 seconds here, Chris. So summate on your thoughts on the compass of conviction and where we need to go from here.
Starting where you are with what you've got, recognizing that we're all created equal and that we may not have equal capacity to understand the ideas that are out there, and maybe keep quiet. Dick Steinhorst, a great real estate mentor of mine, used to say, never pass up an opportunity to keep your mouth shut. So listen actively to somebody saying something you might instantly disagree with, and find out, does it really go against your own personal convictions? And if not, is there something that together we can accomplish that we never thought possible? I think now is the time.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Chris Story, you can find him at ilovehomeralaska.com. It's where he's got copies of his books and his audiobooks and his podcasts and his writings and pictures of his pottery and who knows. You can also check him out today, every Tuesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. on KPEN and KGTL on the peninsula. He'll be broadcasting again, and now on Saturdays and Sundays as well, rebroadcast for Chris Story. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you coming on board and joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Michael.
All right, folks, we got to go. Tomorrow is another day. We'll see, hopefully, Mike Shower, ? Sarah Vance, who knows? It'll be a surprise. We will see you guys tomorrow. Okay. Well, thank you, my friends. I appreciate you guys coming on board. What a good show today. I mean, I just feel like we accomplished a lot. There was a lot of good stuff that came out of those discussions. Some of it kind of painful, no doubt about it. Some of it definitely kind of painful, but we're always learning, always trying to fix things. All right. Thank you so much, folks. We will see you tomorrow. Don't forget to check out the Common Sense Corps if you want to help support the show. And I guess that's it. I guess I just got nothing else this morning. Got a busy day today. We'll see you guys. Be kind. Love one another. Live well.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.